The once proud city of Jerusalem lay in ruins. Once filled with songs of worship, it now echoed with silence and smoke. Babylon's armies had swept through, and among the captives carried away into exile were 4 young men, noble in birth, strong in body, wise in mind. After the victory, King Nebuchadnezzar commanded his chief official to bring the finest of Judah's young men, those without blemish, skilled in wisdom and learning, capable of serving in the royal court, to be trained in the language and customs of Babylon. Among those chosen were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Stories of the Olive presents Daniel. When they arrived Babylon, their very identities were stripped away. They were given new names. Daniel was called Belteshazzar, Hananiah became Shadrach, Mishael Meshach, and Azariah Abednego. Their language changed, their clothes changed, even their food changed. Yet in Daniel's heart, one quiet promise remained. He would not defile himself before his God. When the royal steward brought them food and wine from the king's table, Daniel respectfully asked for permission not to eat it. He and his friends chose simple vegetables and water instead. The steward hesitated, fearful of the king's wrath. Daniel spoke with humility and courage.
Test us for 10 days. Give us only vegetables and water, then compare us with the others.
10 days passed. The steward was astonished. Daniel and his friends looked stronger and healthier than all the other young men, so their simple meals were allowed, and God blessed them with wisdom, understanding, and favor. To Daniel, he gave a special gift, the ability to understand visions and dreams. When the king himself examined them, he found them 10 times wiser than all the magicians and astrologers in his kingdom. One night, King Nebuchadnezzar awoke trembling. He had dreamed of something so vivid, so terrifying that his spirit could not rest. He summoned the wise men and demanded,
"Tell me my dream and its meaning!"
They bowed low and answered,
"There is no man on earth who can do this. Only the gods can reveal such secrets. Tell us the dream, and we will interpret it."
But the king's eyes blazed.
"No! You must tell me both the dream and the meaning, or you will be torn limb from limb."
The wise men cried out in despair. Furious, the king decreed that every wise man in Babylon be executed. News of the decree reached Daniel. He went before the commander and pleaded for time. Then he went to his friends, and together they prayed that God would reveal the mystery. That night, the secret was shown to Daniel in a vision. He praised God, saying, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and power are his." At dawn, Daniel stood before the king.
No wise man can tell the king this mystery, but there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets.
And he told the dream.
O king, you saw a great statue, its head of gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet mixed with iron and clay. Then a stone, not cut by human hands, struck the statue and shattered it. The wind carried away the pieces like chaff, but the stone became a great mountain that filled the earth.
Then Daniel said,
You, O king, are the head of gold. After you shall arise other kingdoms, each inferior to yours, until the God of heaven establishes a kingdom that will never be destroyed.
Nebuchadnezzar fell to his knees.
"Truly, your God is the God of gods and the Lord of Kings.
He made Daniel ruler over the province of Babylon and placed his friends in high positions of authority. Years passed, and pride returned to Nebuchadnezzar's heart. He built a golden image 90 feet high and commanded all nations to bow when the music played. People from every land obeyed, except 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were brought before the furious king. Nebuchadnezzar's voice thundered through the hall as he demanded to know if it was true that they refused to bow before his golden image. He warned that if they would not worship, they would be cast into the blazing furnace. But the 3 men stood calm and unshaken. Their faith was stronger than fear. They declared that their God was able to save them, but even if he did not, they would never bow. And in that moment, their courage burned brighter than the fire before them. The king ordered that the men be thrown into the burning furnace. The furnace blazed 7 times hotter, its flames roaring like a storm. The soldiers who threw the men in were consumed by the heat. The fire was so fierce that it killed them instantly, even before they could step back. But when the king looked inside, he gasped in wonder.
Ooh, did we not throw 3 men bound into the fire? But I see 4 walking unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods.
The 3 came out unscathed. Not a hair singed, not even the smell of smoke. The king declared, "No other god can save in this way." Years later, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed again, this time of a mighty tree reaching to heaven, its branches sheltering the beasts and feeding the nations. But a voice from heaven cried,
"Cut down the tree. Leave the stump bound in iron and bronze until 7 times pass over him."
Nebuchadnezzar summoned Daniel. Daniel interpreted the dream, saying that the great tree the king had seen was a picture of himself, his strength, his kingdom, and his greatness reaching up to the heavens. But within that dream was a warning. His pride had risen too high, and the time would come when he would be driven away from people, living like a beast, until he understood that the Most High rules over every kingdom on earth. A year later, walking on the roof of his palace, the king said,
Is this not great Babylon, which I have built by my power and for my glory?
A voice from heaven answered,
"The kingdom has departed from you."
He was driven from men. His hair grew like eagle's feathers, his nails like claws, and he ate grass like an ox. But in time, when he lifted his eyes to heaven, his reason returned, and he blessed the Lord, saying,
I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and honor the King of Heaven, for all his works are true, and his ways are just.
And so, King Nebuchadnezzar was restored to his throne, his strength and glory greater than before. But now, his heart was changed, for he had learned that all power belongs to the Most High God, and Daniel stood faithfully by his side until the end of his days. Nebuchadnezzar passed away, and his descendant Belshazzar ruled after him. But this king forgot the fear of God. He threw a great feast for 1,000 nobles and, in drunken arrogance, commanded the sacred cups from the temple of Jerusalem to be brought in. He and his guests drank wine and praised idols of gold and silver. Then the music stopped, and silence fell. A hand appeared, and wrote glowing words on the wall. Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. The king's face turned pale. His knees trembled. The queen remembered Daniel and said, "There is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy God." Daniel was brought before King Belshazzar, who promised him gold, fine garments, and power if he could read the mysterious writing on the wall. But Daniel refused the king's rewards, choosing instead to reveal the truth of the message. He proclaimed that Belshazzar had exalted himself against the Lord of heaven, that his deeds had been weighed and found lacking, and that his kingdom would be taken from him and given to the Medes and the Persians. That very night, the city fell. The Medo-Persian army entered Babylon, and Belshazzar was slain. King Darius took the throne. Darius quickly noticed Daniel, now an old man, still faithful, still wise. He set him over all the governors of the land. But envy took root among the others. They said amongst themselves, "We will find no fault in him unless it concerns the law of his God." So they deceived the king into signing a decree. For 30 days, no one may pray to any god or man except the king himself. The law was sealed. It could not be changed. When Daniel heard the decree, he went home, opened his window toward Jerusalem, and prayed, just as he had always done. His enemies watched, then hurried to the king with their accusation. Darius was heartbroken. He valued Daniel, but the law of the Medes and Persians could not be revoked. Reluctantly, he ordered Daniel cast into the lion's den. As the stone was rolled into place, Darius whispered, "Your God, whom you serve continually, he will deliver you." That night the king could not eat or sleep. At dawn he ran to the den and cried out,
"O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God delivered you?"
And Daniel's voice came from within.
My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths. They have not hurt me.
The stone was lifted. Daniel stepped out unharmed. Joy flooded the king's heart. He declared, "I make a decree that all people must fear and honor the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed." Then Darius gave another command, that those who had accused Daniel be brought forth. They, along with their families, were thrown into the lion's den, and before they even reached the floor, the lions overpowered them. So was justice fulfilled, and the power of Daniel's God made known to all. From the day he was taken from Jerusalem to the twilight of his years in Babylon, Daniel never bowed. He served under kings and empires, yet his allegiance remained to one king alone, the Lord of heaven. He had seen the might of Babylon, the arrogance of rulers, the fire of furnaces, the roar of lions, and through it all, the quiet faithfulness of God. Empires rose and fell like tides on the shore, but Daniel's faith stood firm. And though his story belongs to ancient days, its truth endures. The God who gave wisdom to Daniel, who walked with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the flames, who shut the mouths of lions. He is the same today. Faithful, powerful, sovereign over every kingdom of man. Daniel's story isn't just ancient history. It's a mirror for our lives today. He may have lived in Babylon thousands of years ago, but his struggle is one we still recognize. Like Daniel, we live in a world that pulls us to bow, to blend in, to compromise, to trade truth for comfort and conviction for approval. We face the pressure to conform, in our workplaces, in our schools, even in our relationships. Sometimes, standing for what is right can feel like standing alone. But Daniel's life reminds us that one person, wholly surrendered to God, can influence kings and shape nations. Faith doesn't need favor to stand. It only needs trust. Courage doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means trust in the presence of God. Daniel knew the cost of his conviction, yet he prayed anyway. He faced lions, kings, and fiery trials, but he never faced them alone. Through every decree, every danger, and every dark night, the unseen hand of heaven was writing a greater story. A story of faith that endures, and a God who delivers. When Daniel was in the den, surrounded by lions, he wasn't overcome by fear, because he knew who ruled the lions. And when he stood before kings, he didn't tremble, because he served the King of Kings. That same God still rules today. The God who gave wisdom to Daniel still gives wisdom to those who seek him. The God who stood in the fire with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego still stands with those who refuse to bow. The God who shut the mouths of lions still protects those who trust in him. Empires rise and fall, kingdoms change, but faith that stands firm still moves the hand of God. So wherever you are, whether in a place of pressure, confusion, or fear, remember Daniel's story. You don't need to see the outcome to trust the one who holds it. You don't need to fight for control when you serve the God who reigns over all. Faith still matters. Courage still counts. And when faith stands firm, heaven still delivers. Which part of Daniel's journey speaks to your story today? Have you faced a lion's den of your own? I'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections about this story in the comments below. If this story spoke to your heart, subscribe to Stories of the Olive for more lessons from God's Word. Let's keep walking this road of faith together.